We'll get started. Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. My name is Devin Thomas. I'm the Senior Coordinator with Student Engagement at the University of Arizona with the Student Engagement and Career Development team. And I'll be your room host for today. And I'm joined by my co-presenters, and I'll have them introduce themselves now, too.
Hi, everyone. Good morning, and thank you all so much for being here. My name's Annie Curtin, and I lead the Experiential Learning Design team within the Student Engagement and Career Development Department at the University of Arizona.
And hi, everybody. I'm Stephanie Springer. My role at the University of Arizona is I'm a faculty member in the College of Humanities, where I serve as the Internship Director in the Department of Public and Applied Humanities. And I also have a role at the university level. I'm the Internship Council Fellow with the Student Engagement and Career Development team.
Those are intros. Thanks for being here. Annie's going to take us over what we're going to cover for the next 45 minutes.
Yeah, so it's great. We've got a wonderful group. It looks like almost 25 folks in the room, which is awesome. It was really important to Devin and Stephanie and I as we were preparing this presentation today to talk about partnerships on our campus. It was important to make this really interactive and hands-on and hopefully relevant to the work that you are going through and that you're navigating right now at your own institutions. So in our 45 minutes together, we'll give a quick overview of our Internship Council and how that specific partnership came to be. We'll speak briefly about the foundations of that partnership. So what were the conditions that needed to be in place for that to be successful? And then we'll move into a few activities that we've used in our own practice that have helped us to, troubleshoot and collaborate as we navigate partnerships, particularly those that might be ambiguous or certainly multidisciplinary. And then we'll end with some Q&A and wrap-up discussion.
All right, thank you. So I've been an active member of this community of practice, the Internship Council on the University of Arizona campus since it began in 2017. And on the next slide, I'm going to give you a brief overview of the history of the council, how we came to be, and also highlight some of our accomplishments. So get ready for a story. We were right before the beginning of the fall of 2017 when our Assistant Vice President, Abram McAndrew, who opened today's conference, invited 20 internship directors and coordinators from across campus to participate in a focus group. The purpose of the focus group was to discuss campus-wide support for student internships, including the possibility of creating a community of practice for the faculty and staff who supervised and supported students during the internship experience. Of the 20 people who were invited to attend that focus group, 18 people attended at an early meeting in August in Tucson, which is hot. So you could tell based on the enthusiasm of folks that attended that this was definitely something that was interesting to folks. I remember getting Abram's email and thinking like, yes, why am I not talking to my colleagues across campus about the work that they're doing supporting internships in their academic units? We had varied perspectives at that first meeting. We had all classifications of university folks in attendance. We had administrators, faculty, academic advisors, career services staff, and other experiential learning team members. And one of the outcomes of that meeting was the confirmation that a community of practice would be useful, and this was the launching place for the Internship Council. I'll say that this idea of a community of practice was not new to our campus, as similar councils exist for deans of academic affairs and academic advising directors. And in our first year, we gathered just once per semester. And each time we gathered, our conversations were similar to the discussion at the focus group, meaning that they were robust and engaging. It was clear that we had a lot to talk about. We had much to learn from each other, and the council was a way for us to share ideas and to also problem solve around common challenges. We were fortunate at that very early moment in 2017 that 2 colleagues volunteered to manage the logistics of the group. including scheduling rooms, listserv creation, etc. These colleagues were varied in their roles. We had one colleague who was an internship instructor in the College of Social and Behavioral Sciences. That's Susan Warren for the folks here at the U of A. We also had Mary Frances Cooper, who was part of she's the Associate Director for Career Education with the Campus Student Engagement and Career Development team. So we had somebody from Career Services, and we also had somebody from the faculty side of things. And we also have the continued support of our Assistant Vice President, Abra McAndrew. Another key component that was that led to the success was that we had a small group of about 8 volunteers who came together at the beginning of every year. We called ourselves the Internship Council Steering Committee, and we took turns as, well, first, as a committee, we decided what the topics of the meetings would be. And then we also took turns being hosts for those meetings and taking meeting minutes for distribution. In our second and third year, we had so much to discuss. We gathered 3 times per semester. And at this moment in time, our Internship Council includes over 100 faculty and staff members with representation from over 50 academic units. We did have a change in structure in our third year, and this is with the establishment of a formal Internship Council Fellow role. At that moment in time, our 2 colleagues who had been coordinating the behind the scenes work were ready to pass that work on. And it was clear that the Internship Council was an established group. And so it was decided at that moment to have this formal role of Internship Council Fellow. I serve as in this role, and as such, I'm the formal leader of the group. So I take over the coordination of the meeting logistics, and instead of having a rotating host, I host each meeting with, of course, different guest speakers coming in from our group. And also in this role, I'm the person that folks on campus, when they have a question about internships that are general in the sense, they start with me and we figure out either what the answer is because I know it, or who the person we should go to. We've tackled many topics in the last 3 years, and we have many accomplishments, including we revised the 10-year-old university policy for credit-bearing internships. This past year, we've collaborated together to inform a new pilot program, which is called the Summer Impact Award. And this is an award that allows students to apply for a $2,500 stipend for unpaid summer internships. And then most recently, just this spring, we've supported each other during our COVID-19 pandemic response. And we are also collaborating together with ABRA and with the Office of General Counsel and with the Provost to figure out our re-entry plans for the fall. And so I think we'll move on to the next slide. There's the history for you. What was true that allowed this partnership to be successful? So what are the foundations of the partnership? The first piece was that we had a shared understanding of a specific purpose. And that purpose was that we were going to be a community of practice. What that means is that we are a group of folks who have a commonality. And our commonality happens to be, in this case, our work, or the work that we do supports student internships. And as a community of practice, we learn how to do our work better as we interact regularly. We've built upon our strength and our assets, and we also address needs and different capabilities, or rather capacities. There's many of us who are part of the council who have been supervising internships for a very long time, and then there are some who join every semester who are brand new to the role, brand new to the university, and so we strive to understand each other's needs and self-interest. And we've also established tools that facilitate information exchanges, because we understand that not everybody can participate in the in-person or the real-time community of practice meetings. And so we have a listserv. We also have an electronic box where we put information that helps folks stay connected even if they can't attend either our in-person or Zoom meetings. We also have a shared understanding that we take on new goals over time. One of our very first goals was figuring out, what to do together as a group, how we wanted to operate. Very shortly after we figured that out, we had the new opportunity to inform the campus-wide internship policy. The old policy had been written in 2008, and so much had changed both at our institution and at the federal level since that original policy. And so we worked together to figure out a new policy, and that helped bring to light how our approaches to internships were similar, but how we also had differences from each other in our different academic units. I really appreciated that Abra, who helped us work through that process, managed expectations with transparency and with candor about what our scope of influence could be and what pieces of the new internship policy just had to exist because of accreditation processes. Our newest work has been figuring out our COVID response, and we've really leaned on each other, and our students have benefited from the fact that we've been able to support each other and figure out, be agile and nimble in our response. We've been valued by both stakeholders and leadership, and I think that's another key aspect to our success. Stakeholders being the people around the table, the internship coordinators, the career services folk. We have had the chance to be creative and talk with a brain trust of sort. We've shared investment in our success. And then also we've been valued by leadership, and that's been very apparent through the COVID-19 response because, as I mentioned, the provost has asked the Internship Council specifically for insight and perspectives on what makes most sense for experiential learning moving forward, given the limitations of the situation at hand. So unless Annie or Devin have anything to add, before we shift into that activity, we do want to pause and see if there's specific questions that you have about our university's Internship Council before we talk about how you can use some of these partnership foundations in your work. And you can ask those questions either via the chat or by unmuting yourself.
I'll add what was exciting, particularly about our partnership this spring, is that because of our relationship with the Internship Council and the move to online internships, it was a quick win to be able to provide students who, were looking for educationally meaningful opportunities to jump into some of our online programs, and we having the capacity to support that. And so because of the relationship and the buy-in that we had with the Internship Council, they already knew what we had to offer, and it was a really seamless add-in. And so that was a really exciting win, I think, particularly from this spring, and that as a result, we can learn more intentionally rather than reactively, but more proactively, being able to include our online materials around career development and experiential learning into these already really meaningful opportunities for students.
Thank you, Devin. And I think one of the challenges actually that Devin, Annie, and I have talked about is that sometimes now you have to figure out, okay, where are the limits of career services, and because the resources that you provide are so robust and so great that it can be really easy for us as faculty members to be like, okay, you take over. You're doing a great job. Can you just take over this work? We do have some questions coming in from the chat. What were some of the challenges you faced in building the committee, and how did you address them? So one of the first challenges we had was that, we only had 20 folks at that, or 18 of the 20 invited at that first internship council. Well, it wasn't even a council at that point, at that first focus group. And so one of the challenges was identifying all the different players at the university who should be involved. And so we addressed those by sending out various different communications across various different listservs, such as the academic dean's listserv, to invite folks to the meetings that were coming up after this first one, and by reaching out to the academic advising listserv as well to say, forward this invitation to anybody who has anything to do with internships, so that we could get the word out that this group existed. And even this spring, 3 years after we've been in place, we're still learning about new colleagues on campus who do this work. At an institution that's as large as ours, it's just, and with turnover in positions, it's not always possible to capture everybody. But the robustness of the group continues to grow. And then another piece is just logistical, finding a time that everybody can meet is always a challenge. And so that's why we added, we we take meeting minutes and distribute those over the listserv, and also have the box so that information can be shared even with those folks who are unable to attend. And another question is, how is the Internship Council taking into account challenges international students face? For example, the policy that made credit internships only remote. Yeah, that it is a big challenge, and that's something we're continuing to address. We are anticipating that very soon we'll announce under which conditions in-person internships can continue. We were, it was a decision made by the provost to cancel all in-person experiences, and we had to operate under that decision. But we've been glad that she's open to thinking about ways that we can allow in-person internships to continue in the future, even with the limitations that we have. And then another thing that the Internship Council has done has been in close communication with our International Student Services Office to make sure that, for example, with the international or with the internship policy revisions, we ran that new policy by that team to make sure that it was robust and inclusive of that population. Another question comes through, given recent movement and activism with regard to racial and structural injustices, how do you see the internships and community partnership model playing a role in supporting students in creating more equitable career professional environments? I think this is a great question. And in fact, that's one of the topics that I think that the Internship Council will address in the fall semester very early on. We had already started moving in this direction. Just this spring, we had a presentation on universal design for internships. And so we have been thinking about how we can do the work ourselves and how we can push the institution to do this work. But yes, I do think that this will be a continued conversation in the fall when we start having regular meetings as well. And then I know that Annie and Devin's team and the folks at Student Engagement and Career Development have conversations about this as well.
Yeah, I mean, even just the example with the Summer Impact Award, was certainly trying to work to remove financial barriers, which we know also intersect with racial and structural injustices, as an opportunity for students who otherwise wouldn't be able to engage in a unpaid internship for the summer, but also recognizing that that doesn't resolve the problem of unpaid internships, right? But is one way that we can support students directly and financially to pursue opportunities that they otherwise wouldn't have access to. But again, this is an ongoing conversation, and I'm really grateful to continue moving through this work moving forward for the fall. All right, I think we have Annie back, and she's going to move us into our first activity.
Great, hi, thanks, sorry, Zoom technical difficulties, but I'm back. So we're moving into one of our first exercises, and I'm putting in the chat here a Google document, a link to a Google document that's a worksheet that you all can use. And this is called an influence map. And really the purpose of this worksheet or this activity is to take a moment to reflect on the individuals within your work spheres, your personal spheres, individuals and stakeholders that you would turn to either gain buy-in for an idea, to receive feedback on an idea. The purpose here is to try to visualize that realm of people that would help you in pursuing your goals. And this can be, I think, particularly effective when you're looking at developing new partnerships with different constituents across the institution, to identify those individuals that, again, you trust and that can help gain the buy-in or the influence of others that you may need as you continue to make progress towards your goals. So, and thank you, Devin, for also sharing in the chat a PDF version. So I'm gonna set a timer, and the idea here is just to take about 5 minutes and start to plot names on your own map. And you can do that using the editable file, or you can even look at the instructions and just write it down with a pen and paper. There's really no wrong way to do it, but it's that exercise of reflecting and writing it down that I think will be really helpful for your work.
Annie, there's a question about process here in the chat.
Great. So so to answer the first question in the chat, you can write on whatever surface you would like. So if it's easier for folks to type into the editable Google Doc, that's fine, and save your version. Or you refer to the PDF that we shared and use that to write down on a piece of paper. And I think it might be hard. It's hard for me to write and with my eyes closed. So maybe that was just to kind of get you in the mindset of reflecting, to just close your eyes for a moment. I know we're all spending so much time staring at screens. It's nice to take a moment and breathe, but then open your. So I have about 10 seconds left. All right. So we shared that because certainly in our team, and whenever we're approaching a new project or starting to brainstorm around a new goal, it's really helpful to get visual and to start to see connections. And in this case, this is surfacing connections that we might see between individuals, again, within our own teams and across our universities, people that, again, we would want to reach out to share our ideas and to get feedback and eventually to champion those ideas too. So I won't ask everyone to share. I love having sharing moments where people kind of show their work, but I won't ask everybody to share, but I can hold mine up. This is just a very quick one. But one of the things that I notice is just some of the hierarchies within, the different relationships, and seeing who is on different teams and what those reporting structures look like, and just seeing actually how tight-knit we are, and there might only be 1 degree of separation between us and somebody who we really need their feedback or their buy-in for. So that was a quick and hopefully valuable exercise. We can move on to the next slide.
Awesome. Thanks, Annie. So we're going to ask you to hold on to this influence map as we move into our next activity, which will involve getting into some breakout rooms and have you all have some time together to share. So on page 3 of the worksheets that we added, you'll see a list of 20 questions, and these are from Heather Hitchcox. And we find that these questions are really helpful, particularly when we're working with folks outside of the university or with our nonprofit and scoping projects and authentically trying to generate reciprocal relationships. So I'll particularly give a shout out to my colleague Carly, who's here. I've been on calls with her where she's pulled this out, and it's really just moved a conversation to be really generative and really helpful, especially as we're starting on something new with people that we really feel are really important to our work together. So what we're going to ask you to do is pick one of the questions, because 20 is a lot to get through, period, but especially in about a 10-minute window. But we want you to discuss in your breakout room, what question did you pick and why do you feel like this question is important for you to have the answer to in order to move your partnership forward. So maybe you don't know the answer just yet, but you feel like this one stuck out to you and is important to your work. So hang tight.
And Devin,
yeah.
Can you remind folks where to find those 20 questions before we?
Yes, it's on page 3, so of that Google Doc or of the PDF version. You'll see the list there. So we're jumping out of order a little bit, but it's on page 3. So hang tight with me as I get us into some breakout rooms. And we'll come back at about 11:40, so give folks quite a bit of time, but yeah, have a chance. So like I said, pick one question and then, oh darn, yeah. Only 2 pages. All right, I'll drop this, hang tight. Where did I hide it? Okay, try this one. Paste. Let me know if this Google Drive one works. Is it the same link? All right, cool. All right, page 3, we're back on. Hang tight, we'll get you into those breakout rooms. Welcome back. I hope you had a chance to have a good conversation with folks and share your insights. Annie's going to introduce us to the last page of the worksheet. We're not going to have time to play with it today, but we'll wrap up and have time for questions.
Yeah, so I'll just put text for this third and final worksheet. But it's called the musts, coulds, shoulds, and won'ts. It's essentially a series of questions, 4 questions that you can ask yourself when you are either developing a new program or a new partnership or a new project, kind of at the outset of anything new. These 4 questions really help you as kind of the owner or the coordinator to identify the criteria, the essential criteria that must be in place in order for the project, program, partnership, etc., to be successful. So what must this partnership include? And you can kind of run down that list. And I was thinking about Nick's question earlier about questions around inclusivity and equity. Like, put that there in your musts. These are the non-negotiables that we all agree on when we're embarking on something like this, like a new partnership. And similarly, what are the won'ts or the other things that we will not be a part of this? And then the coulds and shoulds are sort of in the middle as those nice to haves or we could have. But again, these 4 questions just help you sort of boil down and distill what are those essential elements, components, criteria that you will use to help you make decisions going forward.
All right, so that wraps it up for us today. We wanted to, thank you for joining us and hearing about what's been a really generative partnership for our team and for our University of Arizona community, and also share some tools and resources that we found really helpful in our practice and working to foster partnerships that are generative and authentic and really centered around stakeholder buy-in and making sure that those relationships are reciprocal. So hopefully you find these helpful and you can take them back to your team and also build on them and share back with us as well. So we'll save this time for any questions that you might have or things that you'd like to share. Hey, Nick. So from our experiences, any off-limits questions? That's a good question. That's a good question about questions. You know, I myself in this haven't, yeah, definitely meta, Nick. I haven't ran into this. I find that more, perhaps it's like my own reservation, right? Is if there's questions that come up or that I'm thinking about, you know, maybe it's more of like a self-censor that I might come up against, or maybe if I hear, you know, kind of the worst case scenario, if I hear a no, right, what could I do then with the response to that? So I say it's less that I've necessarily encountered a negative reaction, but more with myself.
Dakota, your question is, do you have a lot of pushback from faculty in regard to coordinating internships for their programs? How do you combat maybe to territorialness of internships amongst programs? That's a good question. And we have lots of different academic units on campus who handle internships in many different ways. We did encounter, when we were revising the internship policy, some questions about the appropriateness of having a university-wide internship policy. And it was just lack of awareness amongst different individuals on campus that there was already a university-wide policy on internships, and it was just outdated. And so that there needed to be revisions to this policy so that we could make it better. And I think because we brought in so many people to discuss how to revise this policy, that and we, you know, really took feedback, all kinds of feedback into consideration, that we have ended up with this group of folks who, while we do have very engaging, sometimes combative kind of conversations, but no more combative than you would find in any other academia conversation. You know, that we've gotten to a place that's really, at the end of the day, collaborative. You know, and we've experienced that again as we've been trying to figure out the COVID-19 response, and how to figure out the best path forward, given the various needs of experiential learning across campus. But you know, listening and asking for solutions has been a really productive way to get there, because folks come up with solutions that we hadn't yet considered, and sometimes if they're not able to come up with a solution, they realize the fraughtness of the complicatedness of the situation themselves then.
All right. Well, that'll wrap us up, and thank you all for joining, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.